Well, churches are really not just cathedrals, but largely cathedrals. In the Middle Ages, they were the nave, which was the jurisdiction of the congregation, the laity, the everyday man and woman. It was a sort of church hall, community space. And all sorts of things would be going on. You know, you would be meeting people. There were church ales, so the early beer festivals. So they weren't just sacred solemn spaces, and there were hierarchies of space. So we weren't just freely moving around cathedrals as we do today. So we need to understand as well, they have been used for a sort of variety of purposes throughout history.
Well, in this story of cathedrals, it's also not just a story of great architecture and spirituality. There's also quite a bit of dishonesty, corruption and criminality in the story.
Yes, quite a bit. A lot of, I suppose we could say, underlying corruption, particularly when it comes to relics and pilgrimage, which was driving creating the churches through offerings given, through the money, the fundraising. And therefore, the better saints you had, the better relics you had, the more pilgrims would come through the door, and therefore the more money you had. So the better relics, you needed to source them, and therefore there was a lot of underlying corruption with false relics and faking them.
Emma, thank you very much for talking to us. Dr. Emma Wells, her book is titled Heaven and Earth, The Lives and Legacies of the World's Greatest Cathedrals. It's 27 minutes to 8. Still to come this morning on Sunday here on BBC Radio 4, we'll talk to the acting Bishop of Liverpool about what churches are doing there to support a shocked and hurting community. You've also been texting us and emailing us with your favourite cathedrals and why. Steve, for example, says Milan, Chartres and Salisbury, getting a second reference this morning. The first two for their interiors, he says, the last one for its exterior. Jill says Southwell Minster in Nottinghamshire is her favourite cathedral, and Hilary says it's definitely Durham. Well, that can only mean one thing, the Notting Hill Carnival. And it's back this year, post-COVID, in all its glory, one of the largest street festivals in the world. It is famously a celebration of Caribbean culture, music and dance, calypso, steel drums, masquerade, it's all there. Less well known, of course, are its roots in religion. The Reverend Dr. Carlton Turner is a Caribbean contextual theologian and an Anglican priest.
I think when people think of things like Carnival, or carnival traditions, they think that they're secular activities. There's no religious element to it. That's just simply not true. These things have their roots in mainly African, especially carnival traditions, say Toronto, Notting Hill, and across the New World. They have their roots in African traditional religions. They have always been complex places in which everyday human experiences of not only the mundane but also the divine come into interaction. They're complex and powerful spaces, deeply religious.
What's the connection with emancipation?
If you want to find a way to celebrate the freedom after such a long period of enslavement, there was no better way than to have a carnival. In the Caribbean, you have a number of different Carnival or New World Festival traditions, and one of them was a Christmas time called Junkanoo. This is what I did my research on. In the English-speaking Caribbean, whenever slaves had days off, and usually there were only two of them, Boxing Day and New Year's Day, instead of not doing anything, what they did was something like a carnival, where they celebrated their ancestry, celebrated who they are, their humanity, their ancient culture. So when it comes to periods of emancipation around the former colonized British territories, naturally how you observe that time of freedom is through a carnival, where the body gets to express freedom, where your culture is accepted, not just yours, but every other culture, where there's creativity and liveliness and just the sense of freedom in yourself.
Can you explain what is meant by Creolization?
Creolization, more of an older term. It's when you have a number of different cultures, religiosities, worldviews, ways of being, coming into interaction in dynamic ways. So a beautiful example of this is what happened in the New World on slave plantations or slave plantation societies. In the Caribbean, you have examples of mixed societies in which there's no rigid separation between black, Indian, Asian, indigenous, white, European. All of these things come together in a way that something new comes to be. And it's always a dynamic thing, it's not static. And Creolization is just a natural process of our living together.
So, if one looks at Notting Hill or one of these other carnivals, with the backstory you've just given us of the merger between kind of missionary Christianity and African or African Caribbean traditional religious culture, you can almost see pulsating across these carnivals the suppressed religion of the past.
Exactly. It never goes away. The interesting thing about things like Notting Hill Carnival is there's a concept of liminality, and there's a concept of what we call communitas. The space provides an openness in which people encounter something very profound, very deep, something that even transcends themselves and not just located in their own particular tradition. You find it's almost a merging of all the different ethnicities, cultures, worldviews, life experiences. Suddenly you come into a place of flow where newness emerges. And there's no better definition than this, if I'm thinking as a theologian. What the Spirit does, it creates a new people, a new movement, a new flow. And that is a creative space and a powerful space. And I think that's what happens when you come to places like Notting Hill Carnival.
Dr. Carlton Turner there, and the carnival spirit continues to flow on Sunday worship this morning after this programme, which comes from All Saints, Notting Hill. The murder of Olivia Pratt-Cobell, the 9-year-old girl shot dead in her own home by a gunman who had chased another man into her house, has shaken the Merseyside community and shocked the whole country. The two men arrested on suspicion of murder have been released on bail. One of them has been recalled to prison after breaching the terms of his licence. Jean has lived in the same area of Liverpool for more than 50 years. She told BBC Radio Merseyside that her grandson was at school with Olivia.
He took it really bad, really bad. He was close to Olivia, being in the same class, and the things he was coming out with, a 9-year-old, he was very, very sad. We've asked him how he is. He's just said, I'm angry. Family are just... I knew Olivia's mum before she had any children. No matter who you talk to around here, they're all the same. I've known them for years and years, and it's just horrible. It really is.
Olivia's death was the latest in a series of fatal shootings in the city, and it happened exactly 15 years after the murder of 11-year-old Rhys Jones, who was shot dead while walking back from football practice. The Right Reverend Beverly Mason is the acting Bishop of Liverpool. She's also the Bishop of Warrington. Bishop, good morning to you. Welcome. Thank you very much for talking to us today. Can you give us a sense of what people are saying to you? I know you've been visiting people around the area, particularly this week. What's the mood? What's the atmosphere? What are you being told?
People are still trying to process this, of course. It's still very early days, and there's the shock is palpable. There's a sense of disbelief, bewilderment. Parents, as you've just heard, parents and children are both finding this very hard. Parents are finding it hard to find the words to talk about this to their children. And there's been a sense of fear. People haven't felt safe. You know, if this can happen on your own street, and can happen to a little girl in her own home, is any of us safe? So this has been very much the rhetoric. There's also been a lot of anger. Your last speaker just spoke very, very powerfully about the anger of a child, her own anger.
There's a big pastoral challenge here for church leaders like yourself, and also church congregations and members generally. What can be done? What role can churches have at this point?
I think we have a significant role simply in our presence. You know, we're in the community. We serve the community. The churches are open. Prayers are being said across Liverpool in the cathedral and in parish churches. And the churches are, excuse me, churches are a safe place for people to come and find sanctuary.
Another role for the church, of course, is to have a prophetic voice, to speak for the people, to address the people in power from time to time.
Exactly.
Do you think the government has done all it can do to tackle violent crime, particularly in the Merseyside area in Liverpool?
There are significant questions around funding, aren't there? And we've just heard that Liverpool's going to be receiving £500,000. But as our mayor has said, this is a sniff, isn't it? So, yeah, of course, more can be done. I was talking to one child of probably about 12 years old who was talking about the lack of green space in Dovecot. And we know that green space is absolutely vital for the well-being of children. And so we do really need to be thinking about, how we're responding to